my darling dear. Love you.
A garage on West 30th Street in South Los Angeles. An Ampex tape recorder, one take, pillows stuffed inside the drums. The Penguins walked out of that garage in September 1954 with what they assumed was just a demo. 10 million copies later, that demo became the immortal love song of the 1950s.
12 o'clock rock, we're gonna rock around the clock tonight.
In May 1954, Bill Haley and his Comets recorded a song as a B-side. The label wanted to promote the A-side, a nuclear apocalypse song about 13 women and one man. The B-side sold 75,000 copies and disappeared. 1 year later, teenagers across America were dancing in theater aisles, and Rock Around the Clock was selling 1 million copies a month. This is not a story about songs that succeeded. This is about songs that failed first. The 1950s music industry operated on a rigid formula. Major labels decided what would become a hit. Radio programmers determined what America heard. B-sides were designed to be forgotten. But between 1950 and 1959, something kept breaking that formula. Songs the industry dismissed as commercial disappointments, B-sides no one expected to chart, recordings made in garages with borrowed equipment, these kept finding their way to number one. Not through marketing campaigns or label promotion, through film soundtracks discovered by accident, through disc jockeys who flipped the record over, through teenagers who heard something the adults could not. The question is not why these songs succeeded eventually. It is what the industry failed to see when they were first released.
I hear the train a-comin', it's rolling around the bend.
When Johnny Cash recorded Folsom Prison Blues in 1955, Sun Records made a decision about which side of the single mattered. The A-side was So Doggone Lonesome. That was the song they expected to chart. Folsom Prison Blues was relegated to the B-side. It was a song about a prisoner watching a train roll by, sung by a young man who had never been to prison. The imagery was stark, the tone was dark. Nothing about it suggested mainstream appeal. The single charted modestly. The A-side got the attention Sun Records wanted. Then in January 1968, Cash stood in front of 2,000 inmates inside Folsom Prison and sang that song live. The recording captured something the studio version never had. The roar of the crowd, the weight of the context, the authenticity of performing a prison song inside an actual prison. That live recording climbed to number one on the country chart and stayed there for 4 weeks. It became Cash's signature song. In 1954, jazz guitarist Johnny Smith composed an instrumental piece called Walk, Don't Run. It was sophisticated, understated, a showcase for Smith's technical skill as a jazz player. It went nowhere. Jazz singles did not fit the emerging pop charts. Billboard was not yet tracking album sales in a meaningful way. And without chart recognition, Smith's composition remained known only in small jazz circles. 6 years later, in 1960, the Ventures heard Smith's recording and saw something else in it. They stripped away the jazz sophistication, they accelerated the tempo, they added driving drums and turned it into a fast, energetic rock instrumental. The Ventures version reached number 2 on the pop chart. It became both the group's signature hit and one of the most important early guitar instrumentals in rock history.
Run, run, Rudolph, Santa's gotta make it to town.
Chuck Berry recorded Run, Rudolph, Run in 1958. It was a Christmas song, which meant it had to compete with an already crowded seasonal market. And in 1958, Berry's rock and roll Christmas song peaked at number 69 on the Billboard pop chart. For decades, Run, Rudolph, Run remained a minor entry in Berry's catalog. Not a failure, but not a success. Just another seasonal single that had come and gone. Then, in 2021, 63 years after its original release, the song re-entered the charts. It climbed to number 10. Streaming services and holiday playlists had turned a 1958 commercial disappointment into a late career vindication. A Christmas single that once disappeared had quietly become unavoidable.
Only you.
In 1954, the Platters recorded Only You for Federal Records. The label listened to the recording and made a decision. They chose not to release it at all. The Platters then moved to Mercury Records. In 1955, they re-recorded the song. This second version, the one Mercury decided to release, became a major hit. It reached number 5 on the pop chart and number 1 on the R&B chart, and it became one of the quintessential romantic ballads of the 1950s. But the first version, the one Federal Records never released, was forgotten, not because the song was different, because the label had looked at it and seen nothing worth investing in.
And the back that's strong, you lose 16 tons, and what a
16 Tons was written by Merle Travis in the 1940s. It was a coal miner's lament, a song about company stores and debt, and the grinding reality of manual labor. For years, it existed as a regional working-class song with no mass market appeal. Then Tennessee Ernie Ford recorded it in 1955. His version emphasized one particular line, "I owe my soul to the company store." That line, delivered with Ford's deep baritone, transformed the song from a regional piece into something that resonated nationally. The recording reached number 1 on the country chart and crossed over to the pop chart, where it stayed at number 1 for 8 weeks. It sold more than 1 million copies. And it turned an under-recognized labor song into a national anthem of worker struggle.
Freight train, wrong.
Elizabeth Cotten wrote Freight Train sometime between 1906 and 1912. She was young, the song was personal, and for nearly half a century it was completely unknown outside her immediate circle. Cotten did not record it commercially until the 1950s folk revival. By then, she was an older woman, and Freight Train was a relic from her youth. No label had sought it out, no publisher had promoted it. It had simply existed, unrecorded and unheard, for decades. When it finally appeared on record in the mid-1950s, it became a transatlantic standard. American and British folk artists covered it. It became a cornerstone of fingerstyle guitar repertoire, and it turned a song that had been completely obscure for 50 years into a piece that would outlive its composer.
Well, that long black train got my baby.
Herman Parker, known as Junior Parker, recorded Mystery Train for Sun Records in 1953. It was a blues milestone, atmospheric and haunting. It also failed to chart at all. 2 years later, Elvis Presley recorded his own version, backed with I Forgot to Remember to Forget. Presley's version reached number 11 on the country chart. It never became one of his 114 top 40 pop hits. By pure chart metrics, it was a modest success at best. The original by Parker was forgotten commercially. Presley's version was overlooked in favor of his bigger hits. Yet both versions became foundational to how blues and early rock and roll were understood and studied.
Well, come on, let's go, let's go, let's go, let's
When Richie Valens released Come On, Let's Go in 1958 as his first single, it missed the top 40 entirely. It was overshadowed by his later releases, Donna and La Bamba. Then on February 3, 1959, Valens died in a plane crash alongside Buddy Holly and the Big Bopper. He was 17 years old, and interest in his brief catalog began to grow. In 1987, nearly 30 years after his death, the biopic La Bamba was released. The film featured Los Lobos covering Come On, Let's Go. That cover reached number 21 on the pop chart. The attention elevated the original recording. What had been a failed first single became part of the core Valens canon, valued not for its chart performance, but for what it represented. The beginning of a career that ended far too soon. In the Still of the Night was released in 1956. On first release, it was only a moderate hit. It was not treated as a blockbuster. It charted, but not high enough to be considered significant by industry standards. Over the following decades, it became one of the best-known doo-wop songs in existence. Oldies radio kept it alive. Cover versions multiplied. The 1970s and 1980s oldies boom played a crucial role. As nostalgia for the 1950s intensified, programmers and filmmakers went looking for songs that represented teenage romance and innocence. In the Still of the Night fit that need perfectly. What had been modest in 1956 became canonical 3 decades later, not because the song changed, but because the culture's need for it finally caught up. Dave Brubeck recorded Take 5 in 1959 on the album Time Out. The piece was composed in an unusual 5/4 time signature, which made it radically different from standard jazz radio fare. When released as a single, it did not immediately take off. In fact, its chart success was delayed by 2 full years. It was not until 1961 that Take 5 became a major hit. But when it finally connected, it became the best-selling jazz single of all time. The unusual time signature that made programmers hesitant in 1959 became the very thing that made it distinctive and memorable by 1961. Patience had turned a delayed release into a phenomenon. Quiet Village originated as part of Martin Denny's Lounge Act in an Oahu restaurant. It became a key track in the exotica genre and later a defining piece of mid-century tiki culture. The song's status was far removed from its humble origins as restaurant ambiance, but that transformation took time. It required the exotica genre to emerge and gain cultural cachet, and it required listeners to hear those jungle sound effects not as gimmicks, but as innovative production. What began as background music ended up shaping an entire genre.
12 o'clock rock, we're gonna rock around the clock tonight.
On April 12, 1954, Bill Haley and his Comets were scheduled to record 2 songs at Pythian Temple Studio in New York. One was 13 Women, a song about a nuclear bomb that leaves one man alive with 13 women. That was the song producer Milt Gabler wanted to promote. That was the A-side. The other song was Rock Around the Clock. When the single was released in May 1954, it sold approximately 75,000 copies. That was respectable, but not a hit. The song made the cash box charts, but was considered a commercial disappointment. By the industry's measure, Rock Around the Clock had failed. Then something unexpected happened. Director Richard Brooks was preparing to film Blackboard Jungle, a story about juvenile delinquency in an urban high school. He needed an opening song that captured the wild, loud energy of young people. In search of that song, he borrowed a few records from Glenn Ford's 10-year-old son, Peter. Peter Ford had the single, but he knew which side mattered. He flipped it over to Rock Around the Clock. Brooks chose that song for the film's opening credits, and when Blackboard Jungle was released on March 19, 1955, teenagers responded in ways no one anticipated. They jumped out of their seats. They danced in theater aisles. In some theaters, screenings sparked riots. Within 2 months of the film's release, Rock Around the Clock had sold more than 1 million copies. It entered the top 40 on May 14, 1955, and hit number 1 on July 9th, where it stayed for 8 weeks. Bill Haley's manager later described driving in a new Cadillac and turning the radio dial. The song was playing on 5 different stations simultaneously. Within 5 minutes, he heard it a dozen times. He knew then it was a monster hit. The song that had been dismissed as a B-side, recorded in 2 rushed takes because time had run out, became the anthem of rock and roll. Rolling Stone later ranked it number 158 on its list of the 500 greatest songs of all time. The American Film Institute ranked it number 50 on its list of top tunes in American cinema. And it did all of that because a 10-year-old boy flipped a record over and his father listened. When the Penguins recorded Earth Angel in September 1954, it was supposed to be just a demo. They gathered in a garage at 2190 West 30th Street in South Los Angeles at the home of Ted Brinson, a relative of member Curtis Williams. The equipment was basic, an Ampex tape recorder, pillows stuffed inside the drums to muffle the sound. Curtis Williams played a simple piano introduction. The recording emphasized raw a cappella harmonies over production polish. Producer Dootsy Williams took the demo to John Dolphin's record store in Hollywood for a second opinion. Dolphin ran a radio show from the store window, and DJ Huggy Boy put the demo on the air immediately over Dootsy's protests that it was only a demo and not ready for broadcast. The record took off locally within hours. Requests began coming in by the next morning. Dootsy Williams abandoned his plan to overdub additional instrumentation and began immediate manufacturing of the single. He was convinced Hey Senorita would be the hit. That became the A-side. Earth Angel was the B-side. Disc jockeys flipped the record almost immediately. The demand for Earth Angel nearly bankrupted Two-Tone Records. Williams ran out of label paper, which led to the single being pressed on multiple colored labels just to keep up with orders. The song made its first appearance in Billboard as a territorial hit for Los Angeles in October 1954. By December, it had climbed to number 8 on the pop chart and number 1 on the R&B chart, where it stayed for 3 weeks in early 1955. Earth Angel became the first independent label release to appear on Billboard's national pop charts, and it sold, according to the New York Times, over 10 million copies. The Penguins never had another hit. They signed with Mercury Records, bringing along their manager Buck Ram in a 2-for-1 deal that also included the Platters. Mercury really wanted the Penguins. The Platters became the label's more successful act, scoring 23 U.S. top 40 hits. But Earth Angel remained. It was inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame in 1998. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame included it on its list of 500 songs that shaped rock and roll. A demo recorded in a garage with pillows in the drums outlasted its creators, its label, and its era. Not because of what the industry invested in it, but despite what the industry had never planned for it at all. After Rock Around the Clock and Earth Angel, the pattern became visible. Films could resurrect songs. Disc jockeys who ignored the intended A-side could create hits from B-sides. Garage recordings could outsell studio productions.
I put a spell on you.
Screamin' Jay Hawkins intended I Put a Spell on You as a straightforward love ballad. His producer had a different idea. He staged an alcohol-fueled theatrical session that produced the wild, screaming performance now remembered. The 1956 recording was more cult item than massive chart hit. But over time, it became a Halloween and horror culture staple. It influenced shock rock performers decades later, and it was covered by artists ranging from Creedence Clearwater Revival to Nina Simone, artists who saw in Hawkins's theatrical abandon something worth preserving. The song the producer created through theatrical staging and alcohol was not the song Hawkins intended to record, but it was the song that lasted.
Chances are
was released in 1957. It was a romantic ballad in a crowded field of 1950s crooner songs. It charted well, but did not immediately stand above its contemporaries in critical discourse. Over time, its lush arrangement and Mathis's distinctive voice helped it outlast many of those contemporary hits. It became one of the songs most closely associated with him. Long-term cultural memory had elevated one track above former peers, not because the song changed, but because listeners kept returning to it while forgetting the others.
My baby just cares for me.
Nina Simone's recording of My Baby Just Cares for Me was originally an album track, not a single. It appeared in 1958 and attracted little pop attention at the time. In 1987, nearly 30 years later, it was used in a perfume commercial in the UK. After that unexpected exposure, it surged into the British top 10. A forgotten album track had become one of Simone's signature tunes, not through artistic reconsideration, but through commercial placement that introduced it to an audience that had never heard it before.
Let's have a party. Woo! Let's have a party.
Wanda Jackson cut Let's Have a Party for her debut album in 1958. It did not become a significant chart item immediately. 2 years later, when issued as a single, it entered the UK charts. Then it enjoyed yet another revival when used prominently in the 1989 film Dead Poets Society. Repeated media exposure kept pulling a once minor cut back into public view. Each generation discovered it again through a different medium. Shout began as an improvised call and response section at the end of a live show in 1959. The studio version's initial chart performance did not match what would become its later fame. The song's structure, built for audience participation, made it perfect for contexts the Isley Brothers could never have anticipated when they first improvised it on stage.
Keep singing. Day-O.
Harry Belafonte's Day-O, the Banana Boat song, helped bring calypso to American audiences in 1956 and 1957. But it was initially part of a broader calypso craze, not clearly destined to become the enduring representative of the style. As its infectious call-and-response hook was reused in films, television, and advertising over decades, the track transcended its era and Belafonte's own image. It became a timeless cultural reference point rather than just another mid-50s hit. The song had become bigger than the movement that spawned it.
Till the morning come.
Between 1950 and 1959, the American music industry learned something it had not expected to learn: that B-sides could outsell A-sides, that garage recordings could compete with studio productions, that films and television could turn commercial disappointments into cultural phenomena. Rock Around the Clock proved that 10-year-old Peter Ford heard something in a B-side that the entire Decca Records promotional staff had missed. Earth Angel proved that a demo recorded in a garage could sell 10 million copies and define a genre. Folsom Prison Blues proved that a song could wait 13 years for the right context. These 20 songs are evidence that sometimes the world is not ready to listen, and sometimes, when it finally is, what had been forgotten becomes immortal. If you've heard one of these songs today and it brought back a memory you thought you had forgotten, that is what these recordings were meant to do. Not to be successful on first release, but to wait for the moment when they would finally matter. If you want to keep exploring the songs that history had to rediscover, subscribe and check out this video next. Thanks for watching.